Okay, 6-4, solve systems of equations by elimination. So, elimination, that means to eliminate, boys and girls, get rid of. So, you're going to use the addition or subtraction to eliminate variables in a system of equations. It's called elimination. And it's an algebraic method you can use to solve any system of equations. So, if you were given this equation here and this equation here, you line them up. That's the first thing you do. You make sure that the x's are above each other, the y's are on top, are above each other, and then the constants. And there's, everything lines up exactly. The x's, the y's, the equal sign, and then the constant. Then you're going to either add or subtract them. Well, on this one, the whole reason is to eliminate, to get rid of. So if I was to look at this right now, these right here, those coefficients are the same or opposites of each other, so I'm not actually looking at those right now. But if I look at these two right here, I have a positive 3y and a negative 3y. Those are going to eliminate each other. They're going to go away. They're going to become 0. So what we're going to do is we are going to add these two equations together. When I add straight down, I'm going to get, remember there's an invisible 1 right here, so 1x plus 4x is going to get me 5x. The y's disappear, and then 18 minus 3 is going to get me 15. And I actually like to write all my steps, divide by 5, and you would get 3. Okay? Then you plug it back into one of the two original equations, and they decided to plug it into the first equation for x. Replace that. I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I would get 3y equals negative 6, divide by 3, and that's how they got y equals negative 2. So it's the point 3, negative 2. Notice every time there are parentheses around the answer. So if I look at these two equations, do you notice how these two right here are opposites of each other? So if I add the two equations together, those y's are going to disappear. So I'm going to add these two together. 2 plus 4 would get me 6x. This goes away. It goes to 0. And this would get me 24. Divide both sides by 6, and I would get x is equal to 4. And then I'm going to plug it into either top or bottom of equation. It actually doesn't matter. They have decided to do it to the top equation. So I'm going to take this 4, and I'm going to replace the x with the 4. I'm going to get 8. I subtract 8 from both sides, get negative 5, divide by 5 on both sides, and get negative 1. So you have the point 4, negative 1. Here, if you look at this, these two are opposites of each other, so we're going to add straight down. That would get me 11x. Those would go away, negative 22. Divide by 11 on both sides, and I get x equals negative 2. Then I pick one of my two equations. It actually doesn't matter which one I would pick, but in my mind, I'm going to pick the second equation. Reason being is if there's no negative in front of the y, so I don't have to divide by a negative number. So 7 times negative 2 plus y equals negative 14. Negative 14 plus y equals negative 14. I add 14 to both sides, and I get y equals 0. So that's the point, negative 2, 0. Now some of you are, but couldn't I plug it into the first equation? Sure. I don't care. We can plug it into the first equation. That doesn't bother me at all. So the x is equal to negative 2 minus y equals negative 8. Negative 8 minus y equals negative 8. Add 8 to both sides. Negative y equals 0. Divide by negative 1. Y equals 0. So you would have come up with the exact same equation. It did not matter which one you did. Okay? When the coefficients of the variable are the same, subtracting the equations will eliminate the variable. So we're going to be subtracting. So if I look at this right now, we have a positive 5y and a positive 5y. For them to be opposites of each other, we have to subtract. So we're going to be subtracting this. Well, that's like distributing a negative to everything. So that's what we've done, is distributed the negative. Now these are opposites of each other, and it'll work out just fine. So I get a 6x 12. Divide that and you get 2. So x is equal to 2. We've got that part. Now substitute to the original equation. So I'm going to replace the x with 2. I'm going to get negative 4. Add 4 to both sides. That gets me 10. Divide by 5. You get 2. And the answer is 2, 2. So let's do this slowly. But okay, we're going to do another example. So on this one, these are opposite, 8 x's are opposite each other. So we're going to subtract. Okay? So that means on the second equation, we multiply by a -1 by everything, and you get this. So that would get me 0. This would get me -2y. This would get me -4. I divide by -2, and I get 2. Plug it back in. Subtract 4. Get 8. And my answer is 1, so it's the 0.21. So let's do this slowly but surely together. These are opposites of each other right now. So I want to subtract this part right here. So what we're going to do, rewrite the first equation. Subtract the second one. That means you're going to do the opposite. So that's going to be 6x minus 2y equals -14. We're going to add these two equations together. The 6x's are going bye-bye. This gets me 3y equals 12. Divide by 3. Y equals 4. You take that and you plug it back into the original equation. I'm just going to do the first one. Y, just because it doesn't matter which one you do. So I get -6x plus 20 equals 26. Subtract 20 from both sides. Get -6 equals 6. Divide by -6 and get x equals didn't write the negative, -1. So it's the point -1, 4. Okay? When neither variable in a system of equations can be eliminated by adding or subtracting, you can use multiplication. So, if I look at this, we have to figure out what number could we multiply by one of the equations in order to get the variables to eliminate. So since this has a -1 in front of the x, and this has a 3, how can we make -1 into the opposite of 3? By multiplying by 3. So that's what they've done. They're taking this -3 right here, or this 3, they're going to multiply it through to everything. When you do that, you get -3x plus 12y equals 30. Notice how these two right now are now going to eliminate. Okay, so this will get me 14y equals 42. Divide by the 14, and you get 3. Plug it back into the original equation. Replace the y with 3. Get 6. Subtract 6 from both sides, divide by 3, and get 2. So my point is 2, 3. Okay, so we're looking at this one right here. Okay, we're looking for which one has a 1 or a -1 for the coefficient. And so that would be right here. There's an invisible 1. So I want it to be the opposite of 2. What's the opposite of 2? -2. So what we're going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the second equation by a -2. When I do that, I would get 2x plus 5y equals negative 13. And my second equation would be -2x minus 6y equals 10. Now, these are opposites of each other. So those cancel out. This would get -y equals -3. Divide by -1 and get y equals 3. Then you pick one of the first two, or one of the equations. I'm actually going to pick the bottom one. X plus 3y equals -5. So x plus 3 times 3 equals -5. I get x plus 9 equals -5. Subtract 9 from both sides and get x equals -14. -14, 3. Let's see if I did the right work. Yep, I did. Good. Now, it's really important that you actually check your work to make sure that you did the right thing. So I'm going to replace the x with -14, the y with 3. So that would get me -28. This would get me 15. That would get me -13, so that one works. Over here, -14. This would be 3, that's 9. And that would get me -5, that works. So yes, that is the correct answer. So let's do it one more time. Okay, the only one that has a 1 in front is right here. I want it to be the opposite of 7x. So that means I'm going to multiply this all by -7. So when I multiply that by -7, I get -7x minus 14y equals 7. I get 7x minus 3y equals 10. Add those two equations together. I get -17y equals 17. I divide and I get y equals -1. Then I want to plug that back into one of the two equations. I'm just going to pick the first one. You can pick either one. 2 times -1 equals -1. X minus 2 equals -1. Add 2, x equals 1. So 1, -1. Okay. Now this time around, both of the equations, if I look at both of the equations here, neither one of these equations has a 1 as a coefficient. So I need to multiply both equations by something. What I usually look at is look at my coefficients of x. Are they similar to each other? Are they opposites? Is one a factor of the other or something like that? I do that with all of them. And in this case, it doesn't work that way. So we're going to eliminate the y's. Why? Because they're smaller numbers. So I need to, in order to do this, I'm going to multiply the top equation by 3. The bottom equation, I'm going to multiply by the opposite of 2 because I want them to cancel out from each other. So I'm going to multiply 3 on the top equation, and if I do that, I get this. I'm going to multiply the second equation by -2 to get me this. Now, when you look at this, now these cancel out. That's the whole point. So we're trying to cancel out one of the variables. So that would be 10x equals 40. So I divide, that would get me 10x equals 40. Sorry about the phone, guys. Divide by 10, and I would get 4. Okay, plug that back in. 6 times 4 is 24. I subtract 24 from both sides. I get 2y equals -10. So that would get me -5 is my answer. So it's the point 4, -5. So let's look down here. Does 6 go into 5 or 5 go into 6? No. Does 3 go into 4 or 4 go into 3? No. So it doesn't matter which one we eliminate. I'm actually going to eliminate the x's only because we eliminated the y's the step ahead. You notice how this is the opposite sign. So they're opposite signs of each other, so that would be good. So I'm going to multiply this one by 5, and I'm going to multiply this one by 6. Because if I do that, then I can get the coefficients to cancel them, the coefficients of the x to be opposites of each other. So that would be -30x minus 20y equals 30. That would get, 30x plus 18y equals -24. Notice the x's have opposite coefficients. So that would get me -2y equals 6. I divide by -2, y equals -3. Then I need to plug it back into an original equation. I'm just going to use the first one. Doesn't matter. Oh, except for I need to know what y actually equals. So -6x plus 12 equals 6. Subtract 12 from both sides. -6x equals -6. Divide by -6 on both sides. If I do that, I get x equals 1. So we have the point 1, -3. Okay.